Sophia kissed me goodbye as if everything was normal. I felt sick to my stomach knowing what she was doing behind my back. I pretended to be the devoted husband, wishing her good luck, and then I left for the airport as soon as she was out of sight. When I arrived in Berlin, I checked into a hotel near the gallery and spent the day mentally preparing myself for what I was about to do. This wasn't going to be easy. Despite everything, I still loved her. Part of me wished I could just walk away, but I knew I couldn't live with myself if I didn't expose the truth. The gallery was buzzing with energy when I arrived that evening. It was a high-end event with European art elites, wealthy collectors, and renowned artists mingling about. I spotted Sophia almost immediately. She was standing near one of her paintings, talking to a small group of people, including Adrian. A surge of anger washed over me as I watched them. They looked comfortable, almost too comfortable. I waited for the right moment, walking around the gallery. I pretended to admire the art, all the while keeping an eye on them. My heart was racing, but I remained calm. Finally, I saw my chance. Sophia and Adrian had separated from the group and were talking in a quieter corner. Now was the time. I grabbed the microphone that was set up for the evening speeches. The room quieted down as people turned to face me. Sophia looked confused at first, but as I began to speak, her expression turned to one of horror. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice steady but laced with emotion. "I know many of you are here to appreciate the art tonight, but I think there's another story that deserves to be told. A story of betrayal." The room fell silent, and all eyes were on me. "This is my wife, Sophia," I said, pointing to her, "and that man over there," I gestured to Adrian, "is the man she's been cheating on me with for the past year. They've been having an affair behind my back, and I think it's only fair that everyone here knows the truth." The shock on their faces was palpable. Sophia's face turned ghostly white, her mouth opening and closing as if she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Adrian stood frozen in place, his eyes wide with disbelief. The room erupted into murmurs and gasps. I could see people taking out their phones, recording the moment. "I loved you, Sophia," I continued, my voice breaking. "I gave you everything. I trusted you. And this is how you repay me? By sneaking around with another man." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me with her emotions. I needed everyone to see her for who she really was. The crowd began to turn against them. I could hear people whispering, some even clapping in support of me. One woman shouted, "Shame on you, Sophia." Others shook their heads in disgust. Even in a room filled with artists who prided themselves on being open-minded and liberal, there was no excuse for such blatant betrayal. But the most unexpected reaction came from Adrian himself. He stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. He looked at Sophia and then at me. "Jonathan," he said, his voice trembling, "I'm sorry. I had no idea things would get this far. I can't do this anymore." With that, he turned and walked out of the gallery, leaving Sophia standing there, humiliated and alone. She tried to run after him, but the crowd blocked her path. People were whispering, pointing, and shaking their heads in disapproval. She was trapped. There was no escaping the truth now. I stood there, watching as my wife, my once loving wife, crumbled before me. It was a bittersweet moment. I had exposed her, but the victory felt hollow. The woman I had spent 15 years of my life with was no longer the person I thought she was. In the weeks that followed, our marriage officially ended. The divorce was painful but necessary. Sophia tried to apologize, to explain herself, but there was nothing she could say that would undo the damage. I couldn't forgive her, and I didn't want to. The children, of course, were the hardest part. Leo and Mia didn't understand why their mother wasn't coming home. We tried to shield them from the truth as much as possible, but eventually they would know. As for me, I slowly began to rebuild my life. I found solace in the support of friends and family, and in time, I started to heal. It wasn't easy, but I knew I deserved better. I deserved honesty, loyalty, and love. Thank you for watching. That was my story. If you've ever been through something similar, or if the story struck a chord with you, feel free to share your thoughts below. How would you have handled a situation like this? Would you have exposed your partner in public, or would you have taken a different route? Please leave a comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Thanks for watching. The words were like daggers to Jonathan's heart, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. He stood frozen, his world spinning as Sophia continued speaking, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. She was pregnant, but not with his child. It was Sir Edward Grayson who had stolen not only her affections, but also her body. How long had this affair been happening? How had he been so blind? Jonathan staggered back, his mind racing. He could hardly believe what he had heard, but the reality hit him with full force. His wife, the woman he had loved and cherished for over a decade, had betrayed him, and now she was carrying another man's child. Unable to remain silent any longer, Jonathan gathered his composure and stepped into the drawing room. Sophia, who had been sitting with her back to the door, turned sharply at the sound of his footsteps. The blood drained from her face as she realized he had overheard everything. "Jonathan," she began, her voice shaky and panicked. I can explain." "There is nothing to explain, Sophia," he said coldly, his voice devoid of the warmth it once held for her. "I heard every word." The room fell into a heavy silence, save for the faint crackling of the fire in the hearth. Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched the edge of her chair, her eyes wide with fear. "You've been unfaithful," Jonathan continued, his tone firm but pained. "With Edward of all people. How long has this been going on?" Sophia looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "It was a mistake," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never meant for it to happen, but it did," Jonathan said, cutting her off. "And now you're carrying his child." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as she nodded slowly, her composure completely shattered. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you." "Hurt me?" Jonathan scoffed, his anger beginning to rise. "You've already destroyed me, Sophia. Do you think I can simply forget what I've heard? That I can pretend this never happened?" Sophia stood up, her hands wringing together in desperation. "Jonathan, please. I'm begging you. Let's talk about this. We can find a way." "There is no way, Sophia," Jonathan said, his voice filled with finality. "You betrayed our marriage, our vows, and everything we once shared. I cannot stay in a union built on lies." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Sophia's sobs filled the room, but Jonathan could not bring himself to offer her any comfort. His heart was broken beyond repair, and the woman before him, once the love of his life, had become a stranger in his eyes. As the days passed, the scandal spread quietly through the halls of Whitmore Estate. Though the staff dared not speak of it openly, whispers traveled quickly among them. Lady Sophia had retreated to her chambers, avoiding any public appearances, while Lord Jonathan maintained a stoic exterior, though inside he battled a tempest of emotions. It wasn't long before the affair became known in the higher circles of society. Rumors spread across town like wildfire. Lady Sophia Whitmore, wife of the Honorable Lord Jonathan Whitmore, had engaged in an illicit affair with Sir Edward Grayson. The news was shocking not only because of Sophia's high standing, but because of the child she was now carrying, a child that was not Jonathan's. The humiliation was unbearable for Jonathan. Every time he ventured into town, he could feel the weight of the stares and the murmurs behind his back. It was as though the world he had once known, filled with respect and admiration, had crumbled beneath his feet. Despite the public scandal, Lord Jonathan refused to let the affair define him. He would not allow himself to be humiliated further by divorcing Sophia, a move that would bring even more shame upon his name. Instead, he resolved to handle the matter privately, quietly removing Sophia from the estate and taking control of the situation. He consulted his most trusted advisors and friends, including Lady Victoria Harrington, who had been a steadfast presence in his life for years. Though Victoria had her own feelings for Jonathan, she never acted upon them, respecting his marriage to Sophia. Now, however, her heart ached for him as she saw the toll the betrayal had taken. One afternoon, Victoria visited Jonathan at the estate. They sat together in the drawing room, the tension between them palpable. "I'm so sorry for what you've been through, Jonathan," Victoria said gently, placing a hand on his arm. "You didn't deserve this." Jonathan sighed, his gaze distant. "I've spent my life trying to be an honorable man, Victoria, and now it seems all of that has been for nothing." "You are still an honorable man," Victoria insisted firmly. "Sophia's actions do not define you. She made her choices, and now she must live with the consequences." As the weeks went by, Jonathan knew he had to make a decision. He could not allow Sophia to remain at Whitmore Estate, but he also couldn't bring himself to expose the full extent of her betrayal to the world. Dragging their marriage through the courts in a public divorce was not an option. Instead, he resolved that Sophia would leave quietly. He would raise the child as his own, for the sake of his family's reputation and for the innocent life that had been brought into the world. But Sophia would be banished from the estate, never to return. One evening, Jonathan called Sophia to his study. She entered hesitantly, her eyes red from days of crying. She knew what was coming. "I've made my decision," Jonathan said, his voice cold but calm. "You will leave the estate by the end of the week. I will make the necessary arrangements for you to live elsewhere, but you will not return." Sophia nodded, her head bowed in shame. "I understand," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "And the child," Jonathan continued. "I will raise the child as my own. You will have no part in its life. This is the price you must pay for your betrayal." Sophia's tears fell freely now, but she knew there was nothing she could say to change his mind. She had destroyed their marriage, and now she had to face the consequences. The day Sophia left Whitmore Estate was a somber one. The staff watched from afar as her carriage pulled away, her figure fading into the distance. Lord Jonathan stood on the balcony, his heart heavy but resolute. In time, he knew he would heal. The wound of Sophia's betrayal would always remain, but he was certain he had the strength to rebuild his life. Lady Victoria Harrington remained a loyal friend, offering him comfort and companionship in the months that followed. As the seasons changed, Jonathan found himself slowly emerging from the shadows of his past. He had lost a wife, but in the end, he had gained something more valuable, his own dignity and the unwavering support of those who truly cared for him. Thank you for watching this tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and the strength it takes to rebuild after loss. What would you do in Jonathan's place? Could you find forgiveness, or would you seek retribution? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Your feedback is always appreciated.